I'm here to talk about how karma and cooperation have changed the game in independent publishing. So I wonder if you all have felt what's coming. There's a tsunami on its way, and it's really about to overtake this industry. And I always think that if people are lying on the beach and soaking up the sun, then you better watch out, because it's coming. So what is it? It's the independent publishing market. Now you might say, well, that's not new. Well, it's growing, and what's happening within this market is new, and it's about to change the game for our entire publishing industry. So, the independent publishing industry, the self-publishing industry, it's something that the traditional publishers have long tried to ignore, and in many cases have kind of relegated to that ugly stepchild status of the industry. But things have changed now. And the problem has been is that in the past, traditional publishers have held this exalted position where they've been the gatekeepers of ideas. They've decided who's in and who's out, what was worthy and what was not. In short, they decided what they would serve to the readers. They decided what we were able to read, what kind of entertainment, what kind of new information, and they really controlled the process. But all that has changed now. And if we look at the recent statistics about what's come out about the self-publishing or the independent publishing market, it's pretty remarkable. According to Smashwords, in 5 years, indie authors will capture 50% of the ebook market. That's a tidal wave. Publishers Weekly reported a subset of the author's earning report in July and said that self-published authors are dominating certain genres, such as romance, mystery and thriller, sci-fi and fantasy. And this is really significant that they're taking significant market share in all of the genres. This is a tidal wave. This is a change in our industry. Bowker tells us that self-publishing has tripled in 5 years, but what I think is really interesting is the conclusion of the author's earning report last July says that we can now say that self-published authors earn more in royalties than in Big Five authors combined. We got to sit on that for a minute. Self-published authors earn more in royalties than Big Five authors combined. It's a tidal wave. So what happened to these gatekeepers? Well, they're still around, but quite simply, we went around them. We spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of effort trying to get through these gates, trying to get published. But the landscape has changed. Things are different now. And I love the small presses. They're often more flexible, they're very collaborative, they're friendlier, and they're more likely to allow authors in. But authors still have to do most of the work, especially when it comes to marketing their book, which if they are hoping that if you build it, they will come world, they're often really surprised that that's not the way it works. Marketing the book is extremely difficult, and it's a long and tiring process when they probably would rather be sitting there writing their book instead of doing book marketing. But if they have to write the book and then they have to work on the marketing themselves, for those who want to be at the center of the process and control the process and choose the title and select their own cover and earn all of the profits and all of the rewards from it, then independent publishing is very, very attractive. And it's attracting thousands upon thousands upon thousands. But let's face it, the first generation of self-published books were pretty awful. You know, they look like perhaps the author designed their own cover or maybe even had their child do it. Have you seen books like this? Yeah, everybody's nodding. I've seen some of these example books where they would choose a 14-point font and then double space it, trying to make the book look longer than it really was. And, you know, they completely skip the editing steps, so we can't even talk. We're talking about the outside of the book, you know, the interior of it, and the content could have used a lot of help as well. And I doubt that anybody but the author themselves would want one of these books. But with this second generation of independent publishing, the bar has been raised, and independent authors are producing products that stand shoulder to shoulder with anything out there on the market. And look at these books, they're beautiful. But publishing is an industry. And for an independent author to produce something that is a world-class product that can be marketed worldwide, they need help. And that's where what's given rise to our author services market. With the onslaught of all these new authors, an entire services market has emerged, but that hasn't always been a pretty story either. At times, these author services have taken advantage of these newbies, and they have overpromised and they've underdelivered. In short, they broke trust with these authors who really put their life and their energy into their book, and then they charged them arm and leg to do it. And as a result, you know, it created a suspicious marketplace. You know I have had other authors talk to me about the fact that they would get the kind of covers that we called were do-it-yourself, you know, covers. The original self-publishing type books they're what I call do-it-yourself publishing. They're not what I call independent publishing. So they would get covers that they weren't happy with. Their editing was poor. At times they would even have mistakes in the final product. And I know I've seen marketing materials that came across my desk that would be press releases, and it was as if a child who didn't know anything about grammar or punctuation had written it, didn't know anything about active or passive language. That's bad karma. But karma and cooperation have changed the game within the industry, and now independent authors are able to do and work with reputable service providers who ask themselves, instead of saying, how can I get the most market share? They ask themselves, how can I help the most authors? How can I be of most service to the most authors? And that changes everything. And it may seem like a subtle difference, but it's not. It's like night and day. It's like sun and moon. They're there to give and serve and help the authors be professionals so that their products can shine and be marketed around the world. And so we're familiar with this book cycle. This is the way it used to look and all the different steps. But to a new author, this is all new. They have to learn this. But in the old model, the publisher was at the center of everything, not the author. It was all the publisher's decisions about what would happen along the steps with the editing and the proofreading and designing and production. But in this new model, the author is at the center of everything. It's the author's process. And they're at the center of everything, that instead of it being a cycle like an old Ferris wheel, it's more like a flow. So the steps involved in it are similar, but they're different when the author's at the center of it. For example, the writing step. It all starts with that. You can't produce a great product if the writing isn't good. And many authors can just put pen to paper and fly. But others, especially those who write nonfiction, like the clients that I work with, they need help shaping things up and sustaining a message across a book-length manuscript. So they hire a book coach. Then they need a professional editor. Every excellent book has an editor that spent a lot of time working with that book and polishing it up. And then, of course, the proofreading step. If they think they can skip this, they're probably in for a surprise, because you can't proofread your own book, and your editor shouldn't proofread it either, because our brains are pretty amazing. when we cut and paste and take things out and put things back in other places, it's amazing how we can leave words out and have gaps. And they may never notice that until the book's in print, and then it's going to jump off the page. So the proofreading step is extremely important. And then the design. Now, we talked about bad book covers. There's a lot of excellent cover designers, but it's not just the cover, it's the interior of the book that's important. They want a first-class interior designer who will keep them away from the kind of mistakes that amateurs make that they won't even know about, like putting a page number on the first page of a chapter. You don't do that, and it wouldn't be obvious to the independent author unless they had a professional designer help them with that. And then we get to the production, and thank goodness for our print-on-demand companies like Ingram and Print on Demand Global and Lulu and Create Space and Books on Demand here in Germany. They have made all of this possible for us so that the author can print their books on demand. They don't have those carrying costs, and they can actually afford to issue and distribute their books, and the distribution piece is next. And then we have the whole marketing world, and I'm going to talk to you in a minute about Bookarma, which is the company that I'm here representing. But there's a lot of marketing pieces too, and it's a morass of things that just bombard the author about the things they have to do. You know, they need a website, they may want book trailers, they may want to do video marketing, and they might want to hire a publicist. It's all things that this author has to navigate through. And in order to have a professional product, they need somebody to help them step through the industry and all their options. So, with this rise of this author services market, there's been a lot of options that have come their way. And now the author services market is just, it's out there. There's a lot of people. We're filling these halls, and it's very competitive. It's one of the most competitive things that I've seen. And the interesting thing is that when you have this competitive mindset, you're thinking about how can I grab the most market share before other people do. It comes from a mindset that there's not enough for everyone, and that if you win, that means that I lose. And every day we have new providers coming in, and it's like the game of musical chairs. You know that when the music stops, somebody's going to get left out, and you don't want that to be you. But karma and cooperation amongst the service providers has changed everything. It's what happens on the back end that the author doesn't even see amongst these service providers that changes everything. I'm going the wrong direction. What used to be a competitive mindset turns into a more cooperative mindset. And so when you have a cooperative mindset, you know that there's plenty to go around. If you win, that doesn't mean that I lose, because you know that there's more to come for everyone. It also allows people in the services industry to ask one another, how can I help you help more authors? When we cooperate with each other, when we give and share, hello? When we give and share and help one another through the process, then it changes everything for the author. And the reason is that we're not competing with each other, so we're able to give the best price product. We're able to do the work without missing deadlines, without disappointing the author, and without dropping the ball anywhere along the way, and having the author at the very middle of the whole process and serving them. We work together to serve the author. It comes from this attitude of abundance versus this fear of lack. We're not afraid of losing the business. We're interested in working with each other and really cooperating and giving to one another and to the author in order to make them successful. So when those of us who are abundance providers, it's like a handoff. It's like almost like a baton with the author at the middle of it. It goes from the book coach to the editor, to the proofreader, to the designer, to production, and then to the author, where they have a world-class book that they can market around the world that can stand shoulder to shoulder with anything out there on the market. And so instead of that old cycle wheel, it's this flow. It flows right through to the author all the way through the distribution phase and into the marketing. And so speaking of the marketing, another way that karma and cooperation have changed the game for the independent author has to do with the authors themselves. A rather competitive bunch, if I might say so. And they're bombarded with all these things that they have to do to get their book out there, and it's frightening. It's almost immobilizing. They may want to hire a publicist. They may pay for radio interviews or television interviews, and they're told to join Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups, and it's a lot of effort without much measurement, and they never know where they stand. But karma and cooperation amongst the authors has changed this. And I would like to tell you how when they are able to give to each other and share with each other and cooperate with each other, it changes everything for all of them. Because the truth is, the best way for an author to get visibility about their own book is to promote and share other authors and their books. That's the best way for them to do that. And authors understand, because they've been told this, that social media is a very key part of this, and they're right. But the problem with social media is that you gain followers, and you're in this backyard of your own, right? You have your own enclosed circuit of those who you reach and who follow you. And through social media, what you do, you need to get out of your own backyard, because you keep pinging the same audience over and over and over again about your message or about your book, and after a while you have to wonder, is anybody even listening to that anymore? But through karma and cooperation with one another, authors can get out of their own network through Bookarma, which is what I'd like to tell you about. So Bookarma is a revolutionary new book marketing platform where authors help other authors market their books globally through shared social networks. It's a pay-it-forward platform where they open up their own social circles to promote other authors in their books. And here's how it works. So let's say we have author number one, maybe from my hometown in St. Louis, Missouri. So they will use their ISBN, and we pull all the information about their book, the cover and the description, and then the author writes the social messages that they want to go out about their own book. The book is then delivered to a book queue that other authors can browse and can share books from that. So let's say author number two is over here in Sydney, Australia, and they're browsing the queue, and they see author number one's book there, and with one single click, they share that book information to their social network. So author number one over here now has visibility to an entirely new audience that they could never reach on their own. And there's another piece to it, though, too. So when the viewers from author number two's see this book information, it's the cover and the title and description. If they see that in their Facebook or Twitter feed, they can click on that, and it goes back to author number one's book page on Bookarma, and with one click, they can purchase that book. So what's happened is that the authors are exposed to an entirely new audience who would never have had the opportunity to see or purchase the book had it not been for this mechanism. And so the flow works like this. Here's the book queue, goes from the book queue to the sharing, to the Facebook feed or the Twitter, and then to the measurement. So we do measure. We measure these clickbacks. When somebody clicks on the book in the Facebook or Twitter feed, we measure those clicks, how many went back to this author's page. This is a pretty typical example. This author's book was shared 241 times, and from that got 2,822 clickbacks. That's 2,822 people who had the opportunity to purchase the book who this author was never connected with. And that's a pretty great return, don't you think? That's good karma. In fact, the percentage from shares to clickback is 1,170%. It's also a somewhat of a gamified experience for the authors. Every time they share another author's books, their karma score increases. And the higher their karma score, the more often and the more frequently their own book is delivered to the book queue. So they have a chance of gaining more visibility that way. And it's ridiculously affordable. For an author to campaign their book on Bookarma, it's $15 a month. US dollars. It's a subscription, and any author who's serious about marketing their book will find that very attractive. So what it allows authors to do is to develop a worldwide audience, get international exposure without having to cultivate that audience themselves. So, in order for authors to make this shift, because it is competitive, so a lot of times authors, they don't want to talk about other people's books. They don't want to talk about, they don't want to share anything in the genre that they don't write, but we think that this is a mistake because readers are always going to buy books. It's not like they're only going to buy one book and they're choosing between yours and mine. When the authors have developed this abundance mentality, that there's enough to go around, that there's plenty for everyone, that when we share and give and help each other, everybody not only wins, but everybody has the opportunity to give more to their own readers, their own followers, because what they're able to do is to expose the readers to whole new examples of books and things that they would be interested in. So, the surge is coming with independent authors. They're already here. And with the advent of some new marketing avenues and the attitude of giving and sharing and helping each other, this whole attitude within our industry and between the authors has really created this cooperative mentality and the cooperative climate that has changed the game.